I want to go into at least share my side of the story of like how we connected. Um, and I want to cover that, but first I want to kind of go a little bit more into, our mission behind this podcast and like why we're going to invest all this time into this platform specifically. And I want you to share your thoughts, but just for myself, you know, so much energy and time and money even has gone so much into like my Instagram page and my website, you know, which for if you don't know, it's rugged athletetraining.com. Go check it out. Like all of that's great, um, but it's short form content, right? And it's short little snippets of information and like I try to go deep on stuff. I try to give detailed educational, you know, I try to include all that in my posts, but social media just in general, like it does not reward nuance at all. Like it rewards hot takes and controversy and like short clips and that stuff. It is what it is. Like that's just the game you got to play if you're going to try to grow on social media. But I really wanted a platform where we can have longer conversations, go deeper on some of these topics, and really provide more nuance. And I know there's people out there that want to hear those deep dives, and it's also a chance for us to bring on some people and have some cool conversations. So I felt like this was a no-brainer. You got to have a podcast, and it fits right in with our mission of elevating wildland firefighter human performance and really taking it to a new era. I think a lot of that is just providing a platform where we can talk about what that even looks like. It's hard to do that in an Instagram reel or a blog post because no one reads that stuff anymore. So that's kind of why we're here. That's why we're investing all this time. And at least that's kind of my thought. Is there anything that from your side of things, Justin, that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would say it it's been a mission for me to try and transfer the information that exists in these fields, like strength and conditioning, like health, like wellness, like fitness, to the wildland population, the context, the population's opinions, the constraints that we're under. There's not a ton of resources that I look at in the health and wellness industry online that I imagine are directly applicable to wildland firefighters. And that's what really prompted this whole mission of mine of just wanting to create specificity between these resources and the people out there fighting fires in the middle of nowhere under constraints that nobody understands, under situations that are just unparalleled in most contexts. So you're bottlenecked in this field when you're looking for health, fitness, expertise, and you have to succumb to what's just simply available online for multiple reasons. First off, like Austin mentioned, the nuance isn't there. It's very short, it's very catchy, and typically just doesn't lead towards long-term solutions. But then the next factor being it's not relevant to the context that most people in this field are living in. So creating a
Yeah.
platform that can hopefully bridge the gap between the resources, the knowledge, the expertise, and people that actually understand what's going on and what this population's going through is huge. I'm not saying that this is the only resource out there. There's a plentiful amount, but I don't necessarily know if I've really seen it with strength and conditioning specifically and professionals that are licensed and credentialed and have validity to what they're saying and actually have done the job. I think there's a very finite amount of individuals in that role, and it's been awesome to connect with Austin and the individuals who are in this field that have taken it upon themselves to get on the fire line, see it firsthand. And I'm really stoked just to be able to kind of translate that experience firsthand into a resource that does right by the field and does it in a way that blends that expertise translation piece all the way to like where we can see this in place during the job. So that's kind of my piece. I would say I'm just really excited for there to finally be a space for us to have these conversations, bring on practitioners, researchers, whoever else we want to dive into. It could be wildland firefighters. There's an endless amount of information out there to dive into. So it's awesome to not have to succumb to a minute and a half reel and really get to give people some awesome resources and tools in their arsenal that they can tap into to improve their performance.
Yeah, I love that you phrase it like bridge the gap. Like I almost to kind of say the same thing but in a different way. It's like I kind of almost see us as like the translators. You know, like you got the researchers who are honestly who have been doing awesome work for decades, specifically in the wildland firefighter population with exercise physiology and with the job demands and like the data, the information is solid. And there's actually a lot more than I think people realize. There's more than I realized when I first got into the fire service. But there's such a lack of, people like us in our position where we can, take a study, take a publication, and then translate it to the firefighter too, and like help them understand what this means. Like how does this information apply to you, and how can you use this information to make your program and your training plan and your nutrition and your strategy on health better? Because it is very this job is unique in a lot of ways. So there's only so much you can do when you see more generalized information or information specific to populations that are similar but different, like military. Like there's only so much you can do to translate that straight to what we do. So that's where I think we can really make a difference. And we're already trying to do that with everything we're already doing, but this podcast will allow us to really go deeper on these things and try to communicate it at a higher level, but to make sure we're including as much context as we can, as much nuance as we can. At least that's the goal. Who knows, we might fail miserably and this podcast might be a wreck, but you know what, we're just going for it. We're going to kind of figure it out as we go with, the audio might be awful, the quality might be rough. We're figuring out, but hopefully the information we give kind of trumps all that stuff and it ends up being like a great resource for people. Dude, let's go into let's do this. I want to share kind of my side of the story of when we connected and kind of that first phone call we hopped on. I don't know if you remember it, but we'll get into that. I'll share this. I don't even know if I've actually shared this with you, but I remember I was just like scrolling LinkedIn one day. This was probably over 2 years ago now, and your profile just popped up on my feed or something, and I just remember seeing Hot Shot, because I think you had just like started or you just announced your position with Golden Eagles. I saw that and I saw CSCS, and I was like, okay, I didn't know anyone else existed like this. I thought it was just me. And for those of y'all that don't know, CSCS is the Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist certification or qualification through the NSCA. It's kind of like the gold standard of fitness certifications, but specific to the strength and conditioning field, working with college pro athletes, tactical athletes, all that kind of stuff. So the CSCS is very rare, especially in the wildland fire space. I only know of you, me, and maybe like one or two other people that hold that certification and also hold the red card. So when I saw that, I was like, dude, I gotta talk to this guy. So I sent you a message immediately, and we ended up like hopping on that call. I was actually driving to California to start with my crew, And I remember we talked for like it was probably like an hour, hour and a half, just of like, dude, you're a strength coach and a firefighter. Like that's crazy. Like we're rare. Like there's not very many of us. So I don't know if you have any other if your experience was any different or like how was that like for you when we first connected?
Yeah, I would say it was really rare for me to come into contact with anybody in a parallel position that as me, like the same goals, the same ambitions, same mission. When I was just getting into studying what wildland firefighters were, what the demands were, it was in college, and I went to Long Beach State, and my advisor told me very bluntly, "You can do this mission, but I have no one to connect you with. I have zero resources to give you. You are going to have to create everything for yourself if you want to pursue this route of study." And for about 2 years, I assumed like, dude, there's nobody doing anything. Like I can't connect with anyone on LinkedIn. Everybody was it was municipal. It was like every effort was municipal or just other branches of the tactical realm. And I was just finding such a finite amount of folks that I could connect with that had hands-on presence working with wildland firefighters. And that led me to when me and Austin connected, it was this like epiphany moment of, oh my God, there's a person trying to do the exact same thing. Thank God I connected with them. And the missions were just so aligned, it made sense just to keep the conversation going and combine forces because it wasn't my goal wasn't to produce white papers. I didn't want to do any my goal is not to do publications per se. I wanted to just be a person who's able to go out to crews and give information, give practical tools and things that people can leverage to make this job more feasible and also just not only just survive it, but go above and beyond the metrics and accomplish things that they didn't even know were within their grasp. Like the tools and knowledge and resources from my very short experience from my graduate studies was there's not really many people interacting with these groups and it made sense because for my studies when I collected research I had to work to go contact people. I had to put in an infinite amount of calls, emails, and touching base with parties totally adjacent to the actual crews themselves to just get this golden nugget of a contact that might let me come out and hike with them, have these conversations, and provide these resources. And it made sense to me why nobody's doing it. They're so far removed, and it's a population that isn't asking for help in most scenarios. And the traditions, the more that I've gotten into fire, it just kind of hits home that for probably over 50, 60, 70, whatever amount of years that this has become an organized approach to firefighting, this sector of firefighters do not necessarily interact with folks and ask for help. It's a very self-reliant based field, and it just made me captivated to try and get buy-in. That was like the biggest thing that just motivated me throughout the entire program was I want to be in a position where I can set myself up to give these tools to people who deserve them. And it was just a pleasure to meet Austin, hear the same experience, and a person who wanted to go gain that firsthand experience and put themselves in a role where they could now speak to that community, be received well, and pass along these tools that we both have seen in high level sport performance settings and just need to be present with these populations because they are extreme sport athletes. They are pro athletes, and the feats of endurance, the acts, the demands placed upon them require pro athlete level knowledge in a context that is the least pro athlete level like scenario of all time. Like it is the antithesis of a pro athlete scenario, and I think that commonality between us just it resonated, and it's why we kept talking for so
Yeah.
long. It just we both got it. We both understood it. Like this is a unique group that requires a unique solution, and if we want to get anywhere in this field, we're gonna have to see it, understand it, live it, and then come back and try to do this in a more dialed approach that makes sense to the specificity of the psychology of the person as well as the physiology of the person. So it's just a really rare combination when you have somebody in that realm that has the mission to go out in the middle of nowhere to be with this type of context and be able to live in it, but also has those skills and requisite abilities to provide performance information. And it's honestly just been there's no other way I'd imagine I'd be able to go and speak to crews and provide these resources without having some level of intrinsic knowledge of what's going on out there.
Yeah.
So I think all those factors combined just makes it a really rare sight to see somebody with those credentials and has done the requisite steps to go and treat this population with the respect they deserve and understanding that they require.
Yeah, I for sure. I want to go a little bit deeper into your kind of your experience, your firsthand experience, like as a hotshot coming from a sports performance background, and then like I want to share my experience too. Going from being a college athlete and then coaching in professional baseball, and then transitioning to a contracting type two crew, and the wild change that was. I want to share too. I'll kind of finish this episode by just going over the origin of Rugged Athlete, like why this company was started, how it started, and all that stuff. But I want to hear from you first. If you can go more into kind of, well, I want to hear about your intrinsic experience with your background. But if you can share a little bit more, before you got into Wildland, what was your experience from like a sports performance and strength and conditioning side, and like where did your career and everything start out?
Yeah, so in order to answer that question, I kind of have to dive into my athletic performance realm in general. I played sports my entire life. My whole basis for living was surrounded by movement, competition, and trying to push myself in various ways. And like most individuals who are in that boat, after high school, you just kind of you get left up in the air with how do I tap into this thing that I've been doing for 18 years of life? How do I translate this? So it's that's what really derived my passion for sport performance, was really just to enhance my knowledge around human movement, human capacity, performance, and also how that can translate to various occupations that are just extremely demanding. I became captivated with first responders when I got to work with Ventura County Structural Department when I was a strength and conditioning coach at Sports Academy, and just thinking about the various stressors that these people have to accommodate and the high level performance required of them under these massive life threatening conditions, it just became more apparent to me that all of these things that apply to sport performance, things that you can give to athletes to achieve their highest potential, those resources are just massively undervalued and not translated to the first responder realm. And of course, various branches are pretty tapped into it through experience and research and integration. But the wildland firefighting branch, it's one that just captivated me more than anything in the world, to know that these individuals are just out there in the middle of nowhere and undergoing some of the harshest physiological stressors that I can think of, and doing it by just winging it. And not really necessarily having an approach that's dialed through experience, and obviously like year in year out people probably adjust and fine tune and create a little bit more of a rhythm to how they can prepare for the season. But it was really shocking to me just how I had no idea what I was getting into, and I'm just kind of glad that I
Yeah.
didn't, because I played football, I've done wrestling, I've done like marathons, but nothing at all prepared me for this field because of the context that you have to do it in. So acknowledging this isn't just performance. How you can go in and you can do a anaerobic threshold test and score really high in the gym. You can go in and hold a plank for 2 minutes. You could get a great score on your VO2 max. You could have a 70 VO2. I don't care about any of that, because as soon as you hit the line and shit hits the fan and you're on sleep, you have sleep deprivation, or you had to eat an MRE all day, every day as your only fuel, or your crew is just going through it and you're like having to deal with just personalities and like close confinement, long drives, like this, it's a it's not enough just to be able to have the requisite fitness on paper to do this job, but that even
Is
adds.
there like an oh shit moment or like a light bulb moment your first season where you're like, oh, this is what this job is. Like I
Dude,
get it now.
the the first role we had, it was up in near the Shasta Lake. It was just project work. We went out there for like 2 weeks, and I had never had a 60-pound pack on for 16 hours, like 14 hours in my life. So I show up, like, I trained really hard for that preseason, all the way leading up to it. I was pretty dialed in terms of all the things I could think about. My researcher mind was like, okay, I'm going to acquire these general traits, go about this in like a research way where I build up these capacities and hopefully they translate. And I had never done manual labor like this in my life. I don't know if anybody like just general manual labor is not going to translate to 100 plus degrees, 60-pound pack, and just all day, every day, bending down, picking up, bending down, picking up. Like I felt like I did thousands of deadlifts every single day for 14 days. And then just we're gonna walk over, we're gonna bed down, you're gonna have a backpacker meal, and you're gonna get up, do it all again. And I remember just probably like 4 or 5 days in, I was like, dude, my back hurts. Like this is pretty rough. Like I feel like I'm getting up, and this is a day where I normally would probably take a rest day or start to like kind of regulate or make some adjustments to my training program and set myself up for success and a good recovery. Well, that's
No, you gotta keep
obviously
working.
just never gonna happen. So you, man,
You're
that
only
that
on
knee
day
pain,
five.
that's a bummer. Still, those logs need to get thrown. That brush needs to get cleared. It's like just I didn't really know until I was in it that this superhuman physical endurance performance is really just like a side effect of work output that needs to be done. Like you're there for it's just your job. Like you're there to produce this outcome. You're there to turn over a good product. So it kept being placed in my mind like, dude, I don't know how anybody could do this without preparing for it. Like how can you go about this job and just not have any tools in your arsenal for recovery, not have any knowledge about sleep and how to have better sleep hygiene, then like the tools for the ability to keep your body going in and out every single day, modulating the stress, modulating the pain, and then having all of this requisite knowledge to slowly build up those capacities to be in a place where you don't go on that first assignment and you just have that, man, I'm not prepared moment. And I extremely felt that on those first few days, just realizing like, dude, I can train all I want in the gym, I can train all I want on the hill. There's nothing that's going to prepare me for this, like doing the job itself. So there was that like humility based moment where I thought, dude, this my sports science mind is meeting its match right here the in a variety of ways, whether it was psychological, but also just the mental rigor to keep going for 14 days in pain, and also got poison oak pretty freaking bad during that
Yeah.
during that prep. So there's just a lot of factors that I was not ready for, and I just went into it very naive, thinking, man, my fitness is dialed, it's going to translate. But I'm really glad I had that because I don't think I would have survived without it. All those other factors would have probably killed me, and just very thankful for the training that I did do to make that process a little bit more bearable.
Yep. I had a very similar experience. My first season, and it's so hard to know. Like you can watch the documentaries, you can watch stuff on YouTube, you can spend hours on Reddit and do as much research as you humanly possibly can, but nothing can really prepare you for like that first assignment. And for me, it was literally my first day on an incident when we were going direct. Like I still think to this day that was the hardest day of my life, like physically and mentally. I mean, I got my ass kicked. And I was in great shape going in. I was super strong, super fit, but like I literally didn't know what to expect. Like I didn't fuel myself properly. I didn't have enough water. I didn't have enough caffeine. I didn't know how to pace myself. I got thrown into a swamper position, and dude, I was just swamping like it was a race to put out this fire. Killed myself, and you know, died. I literally died that first shift. But then, on that next assignment, it was even, I would say the assignment was even harder. But like now that I knew what to expect, I was able to really use like my base of fitness and my base of strength and work capacity, and I crushed it. Like I was strong, I was fit for more than 16 hours. We got extended a couple of times on those first days of my second ever assignment. But like nothing can really prepare you until you do it, until you experience it. There's nothing. So I've been in the same exact position, but I want to ask you. You mentioned like your sports science mind, like how that's how you were thinking about all of this, all of the pain and all of the suffering that you were experiencing, and you're seeing it through the sports science lens. Um, I had something very similar because obviously I'm thinking about everything from like a physical training background and a work capacity background, and I'm literally as I'm throwing stuff or hiking, I'm thinking about like biomechanics because like that's the world that I came from, and so wonder if you could go into a little bit more like even just your first season in general, kind of what was like what really stood out to you, or like what were the gaps that you noticed like that existed in the job that you knew like from your background, your sports science mind, you're like, you know, we're missing this we need this resource, or we need this education. Like what was missing, and what really stood out from your perspective?
Yeah, I'd say there's a couple things. And of course, the caveat to this is there's a million ways to do this job. There's a million body types that can do this job. There's a million sets of requisite fitness that still do the job. But what I did notice was that movement patterns were not a commonly talked about thing in this profession. And when I was thinking about every task, whether it's picking up a log, whether it's throwing something, whether it's a rotation, whether it's a isometric hold, whether it's some awkward unilateral load, I was always just kind of picturing these tasks as like, oh, I've seen this before. I've done tasks in the gym. I've done tasks in my
Yeah.
training that parallel these things. I was able to bring in good, solid mechanical foundations to my movements and
Mm-hmm.
translate them. Like if I'm hiking per se too, making sure that okay, let me kind of like regulate this, choose my positioning, choose my knee angles, choose my hip angles. Let me tap into certain muscle tissues that I know are going to be a little bit more advantageous for this, like the art of hiking, which of course there's people that don't ever have to know anything about biomechanics and can be great hikers, but it's
Yeah.
just again, it's tools for you to leverage and make possible during your training in the off season so that you can build up those systems and also understand which systems are being heavily overused during the season and then have a complementary set of knowledge to upkeep them so you don't after 5, 10, 15 years wake up and wonder why these systems are malfunctioning, why injuries occurring at a higher rate. So it's not necessarily like my point to change people in their approach to the job, but understand what's actually being activated. What movement patterns are we heavily utilizing? And understanding that asymmetries are bound to happen in this job. And it allowed me to kind of modulate my kind of experience on a day in, day out basis of just kind of understanding, man, if I'm swamping and I'm just repeatedly doing rotational throws to the left, or I'm constantly like doing these just different actions with my like right shoulder instead of left. I was able to kind of just have a biomechanics basis to my day and make sure that I'm trying to do things as evenly as possible, or make sure that I'm not getting sloppy and undervaluing just proper mechanics of like core engagement, glute activation. Like I was every single day kind of preparing for the demands like I would in a gym. You can ask anyone on my crew. I foam roll every single day. I warm up before every single bout that we do. If we're getting a briefing, I'm stretching. Like I'm doing
Yep.
micro stretches all day, every day. I'm doing activation all day, every day. So those things are the only way that I was actually able to survive 2 years of this job without an injury. Well, at least a chronic injury. I did fall off a cliff one time. So that was an injury. That was just me being stupid and not having SA up. My crew laughs at me for that one. But no, like I was honestly just it really solidified in my mind that these tools are they have efficacy. These things allowed
Yeah.
I've never I've
Yep.
jumped into this job completely in over my head, but those tools were my foundation. I was able to rely upon them to keep my approach to this very sustainable. My body was able to recover, and I didn't wake up after most shifts with much, like, I don't know, undue pain. Like, of course you have pain, but just like those two, my back's chronically bothering me, my knee is chronically bothering me. The upkeep and the knowledge and the skills that I've acquired through movement pattern building in the gym, through recruitment, through force production, it made this extremely easy. Like picking up a 100-pound log with proper mechanics, proper engagement, 100 times that day. If you're not doing it with those things in mind, there's no questions asked. You're going to feel it that next day. You're going to feel it either way. But if you're doing that pattern in the gym and building that into your nervous system, building that connection already, you're just setting yourself up for a easier transition between off season, in season. So that's kind of like one thing that I was always viewing was just patterns. Hinges, squats,
Yeah.
pulls, pushes. Like everything that I'm doing all of these days, it's an extension of what I already know how to do. Of course, various angles, various awkward terrains, ecological variables are present, but it's really foundational when it comes down to it. You're pushing and you're pulling, or you're holding, or anti-moving, like anti-flexion,
Yeah.
anti-extension.
Yep.
So it's really like all these patterns that I knew know of, they just kind of clicked in my head of this is just a different way for me to execute this task that I've already done for 10 years in the gym. But at the same
Yeah.
time, that's the biomechanical side of things.
Yep.
Every fire assignment, pacing was probably the most like high level variable, and I feel like how that shift was going to go for people. And an understanding of bioenergetics, metabolic pathways, energy expenditure, if you don't have those things in mind, it kind of blows my mind how someone can kind of just go, 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 and not have any feedback of, man, what's occurring in my body? What's this shift gonna look like today? How do I need to fuel for these processes? And how's my body just internally feeling? How can I adjust this? What are some strategies where I can maybe like make this a little bit more sustainable for that 10, 12, 14 hours of work? All these things are like a mute point when it comes to some folks in this field who can just have a psychology that I will never understand. Like just an ability to push through pain, push through suffering, and just continue to put out under sometimes no food, sometimes 900 milligrams of caffeine. There's freaks in this field that can do things that I will never be able to explain, and I think scientists should study them. But for the individual, like at some
Yep.
point, that catches up to you. So it's really, for
Yeah.
me, it's an argument of do you want to be able to do this forever? Do you want to be able to like hold your grandkids and be able to go play when you're 80? Do you want to be able to do this job for 20 years and not suffer from every type of joint pain possible and just increase your quality of living? There's two ways to do the job, and both of them get the same work done. But in my head, it seems bang for your buck to invest in these principles and take that extra layer of approach to make sure that your various systems can really be resilient to them. Because otherwise, it's
Yep.
just damage. It's going to continue to be damage built on and over and over and over. When you talk about endurance performance in sports, it's like, dude, it's thousands of cycles. We're not talking about a powerlifting event with like one lift. We're talking about tens of thousands of reps every single day. And the better we can prepare and create a more sustainable approach to doing those patterns, the less damage that's going to occur.
That's dude. My first season was almost the exact same. Like seeing the pacing side of it and like either the positive or negative effects of pacing correctly or coming out too hot and blowing myself up. Like it was so eye opening. And then the biomechanics thing too. Like I learned. Well, I don't want to say I learned right away, but like I could feel right away that like my background, my experience of training college and pro athletes and being so like detailed and um, you know zoomed into like the intricacies of literally professional athletes and like the biomechanics and using force plates and using motion capture technology. Like I was used to doing that with pro athletes, and then I'm taking that same kind of mindset to downhill hiking now, or hiking with a dolly on my shoulder. And it was so helpful for me, as I kind of made my way through my first season and started to like learn the job more. I felt like I could, like, my confidence was growing because I'm just learning more and more ways that I can apply my strength and conditioning background to this extremely physically demanding occupation. And it's to the point now where, I mean, those two things you mentioned, I think, are two of the most critical yet underrated like aspects of the job. I mean, it's so much to where, the high performance hiking course we put together has entire modules on those two topics, because like, right, we gotta dial this in. And like, I need you to be thinking about efficiency and mechanics, because like you mentioned, this isn't just one rep. Like we're doing, I've had shifts where I've taken 40,000 steps. So like, if you're messed up, if your mechanics are trash, you're timesing that by 10, 15, 20, up to 40,000 steps per day with load on your back, with all of this added axial load. And you can wreck yourself. And I know it's so common. People on your crew, everybody has people on their crew that are like old, broken, barely hanging on by a thread. So I had the same experience going into my first season. I think for me, it was more amplified because I literally went from like this summer of 2017 and summer of 2018, I was coaching in professional baseball. So I'm at the highest level of pro sports. I mean, you can imagine we have some of the nicest facilities. We got all of the fanciest gym equipment and technology you can possibly want at the time. I went from that environment to, in the summer of 2019, working for a contractor type 2 hand crew. Like, I don't know if you can get more opposite or like what's going on there. So it was incredibly eye opening. And on just the resource side of things, but on the other end of just seeing like, man, like this job needs professionals like that we had when I worked in pro sports. Obviously, it's never going to be quite the same. We're talking about $1 billion professional sports team, and we're talking about wildland firefighters. Those are never going to be completely similar, but just the gap of and the lack of resources that existed were kind of mind blowing to me, and kind of became apparent to me right away, like through the course of that first season of like, I saw the value that I could bring to my crew members. I was taking crew members to Planet Fitness and taking them through workouts, or I was helping them deal with nagging injuries throughout the season and showing them stretches they could do. And like I was trying to use my background to help wherever I could. And that was kind of that first year. I was like, man, I feel like I could help more people than just the people on my crew. And that's kind of where the idea behind Rugged Athletes started. It's not where it officially started, which I'll get to that story kind of at the end. But yeah, I was like, man, I've got all this experience. I've got all this knowledge and strength and conditioning. I know how to train. I know how to recover. I know how to prevent injuries in a lot of cases. And I'm seeing this job that's like just breaking people off and like physically and mentally just crushing people throughout the course of a fire season and the course of a career. I was like, man, I gotta try to help people. So that's kind of, I mean, I think I'm just a long-winded way of saying I agree with you, but
I have an
that's
interesting thing to
that's
add
where
on
it's all
though.
starting.
So you mentioned we both came from backgrounds that were high level sport performance, massive amount of resources, a ton of like extreme possibilities for interventions beyond like what the normal population even thinks is there. Like groundbreaking technologies, millions of dollars of technologies to induce these adaptations in these athletes. And to be honest, I've kind of it really is kind of funny to me how my I don't I don't care about any of those things. The best tools to me in my fitness and my performance cost minimal amounts of funds. A squat,
Hmm.
whether you do it in a rack that costs $4,000 in a 5,000 square foot gym that has technology built into it that can assess how fast you're moving and all these extra add-ons, a squat is a squat. You running at high intensities, pushing your heart rate, whether you do it on a treadmill with an EKG hooked up to you, whether you have a physiologist right next to you, or whether you're doing it just on the hill in your backyard, the stressors are the stressors. And I think one thing that I want this population to know when it comes to sport performance, even though I used to work in a facility that had millions of dollars of funding to get these technologies, the things that I use every single day cost probably on my monthly budget less than $50 a month. Like my gym membership, my equipment, my running shoes, and maybe like my Garmin watch or whatever. Like it's really minimal the amount of things that you need to take advantage of some of these very high level sport performance principles. So it's part of my mission in this to like really emphasize the fact that you don't need to change your entire life. You don't need to have access to the same things that an athlete needs. We can really do a lot with minimal effective doses of some of these things. And I don't know if that's been your same experience, but I really came to terms with that during my fire seasons where you really don't have access to much. I brought a foam roller out there, I had some mini bands out there,
Hmm.
but you can take advantage of like pretty much anything around you and do some of the same things that I do in the gym when I'm out 1,000 miles away from my home in the middle of the woods and still take advantage of these principles and use them to my benefit in my performance. So that's like one commonality that I imagine that me and you maybe both have. Like we're very minimalist with the training and can kind of get to the foundational things are really the heavy hitters in my mind. And that doesn't require extensive amounts of technology or a giant sport performance facility or a recovery room that you need to go to. These big levers to pull on really are minimal cost. Like a lot of it like doesn't require a ton of access or barriers to entry.
Yeah, a lot of it, in my opinion, is just it's using the resources you already have, but in a more effective way, and in a way that moves the needle on your health and your performance and your recovery, and doesn't take away from it. So like one of the quotes I like to use all the time when it comes to PT is we want to build calluses, not blisters. And really what that can be summed up as is, we want to we do want to build calluses, so we want to add stress and we want to create stimulus with our training plan, but we want to do so in a smart, progressive, thoughtful way that gets us to the end goal of calloused, resilient, strong, but not in a way that's going to tear you up or break your body down, create those blisters. And so, that approach has always kind of been there, even working with college or professional athlete populations. But there is also at that level, like, you have the money. Some of that too is with us, we're just trying to scrap with what we got, and you don't have a choice. We have to be resourceful. But even in some of my previous positions, like, yeah, we have to use force plate testing. And I mean, shoot, with our professional baseball players, we were doing each athlete, each player would have like a 20-page report done on them, and it was like this full movement assessment. We had every single joint, range of motion to the degree, written down. And I mean, we did sweat testing with them. We did the amount of stuff we did was crazy. But we also had a massive human performance staff of probably 9 or 10 strength and conditioning coaches, athletic trainers. We had a sports scientist running a sports science department. Like, we had the amount of resources we had were crazy. So it is valuable, I will say, like, coming from that background, like experiencing that, because it's like, when you're at that extreme side of the spectrum, you can scale it down to fit where you are now. And so, like, for us, for Wildland, for kind of the state of the profession, I mean, you can kind of see it with like what we've prioritized in our content so far, but also in just from our experience, like one-on-one coaching people, we're focusing on the basics. We're focusing on the fundamentals. Like, that's really where we're coaching people and educating people on the most. And honestly, it's been kind of good for me going from that world of strength and conditioning to this world, over the course of my career, and being able to just like teach people about stuff that sometimes I kind of take for granted, or I just feel like everybody knows this, but the truth is not everybody knows all these things about sleep hygiene, and all these things about HRV, and all these things about velocity-based training. Like, yeah, the world I came from, everybody knows about that, because everybody has a master's degree and a CSCS, and that's their full-time career, and they're working 60, 70, 80 hours a week doing it, for like no pay. But now we're in this world where it's a little bit different. So I will say this last thing on this topic is, like, I'm excited to see what the future looks like, as hopefully more funding and more resources get thrown into the physical health side of the profession, and eventually getting into more of like a human performance model, which we'll have a whole episode dedicated to this in the future, I'm sure. But I do think it is important for like you and me in our position to share kind of like the background that we came from, and the tools and the resources that we had available to us, because I do think a lot of wildland firefighters, they don't even know this stuff exists. They don't know what force plate testing is. And I don't expect them to, but I think it does help people understand, like, dude, there's a whole nother world out there. Like, and some of it is pretty sick. Like, some of the stuff that we could potentially bring into the wildland profession is awesome. It just doesn't exist yet. Like, we're not there. We're still focusing on just kind of like general education stuff, and just making resources like this, and trying to make stuff more mainstream. So we'll get there. It just might take a while. I want to go into kind of my background, or I guess like why I started Rugged Athlete. First of all, I didn't know you could be a strength and conditioning coach. I didn't know that was like a profession, like a career field, until probably like my sophomore year in college. Before that, I always thought I was just going to be a baseball coach. If you followed my page for a while, you probably know my background with baseball. I played all through college. I played at the Division III level, and like for me, my love of strength and conditioning really started, I would say, like my freshman year of high school, which was, damn, I'm gonna sound old, but that was like 20 years ago now. That's insane, that I'm saying that out loud. But what really started it was me being the smallest kid on my team and having a dream to play baseball at the college level, but knowing like I got to get bigger, I got to get stronger, I got to put on muscle, and like I need to do all this stuff in the weight room if I want to accomplish my dream and my goal of playing baseball at the college level. So, being the obsessed, driven, determined athlete that I was back in the day, I dove all in. I was like researching strength and conditioning, and back then it was like in literal magazines and on internet forums and stuff like that. But that's what I was doing. I was trying to dig and find as much stuff as I could, and I started writing my own training programs back in 2006, 2007, when I was like a freshman in high school, and that slowly evolved over the course of like high school. I just kept learning more. When I got to college and started my baseball career at the college level, I started studying kinesiology. That was my degree, and just went all in and tried to get experience in the summers, at internships and working at gyms and training people. And once I got my experience, like firsthand training and coaching people, I was locked in. I was like, "Whoa, you can do this like as a job. Like people will pay you money, and you just do what I love doing." It was a no-brainer for me. So I like was going through college. I knew I had no shot of playing pro baseball, like zero shot. I was like, I'm just fighting for a starting spot at the D3 level. So pro baseball is not in the cards for me, but that's okay because my goal is I want to get into strength and conditioning. I want to do that professionally. And, eventually my goal was to work in pro baseball. That's kind of where I wanted to get to. And started off, graduated college, worked at a small private gym in Kansas City, where I'm from. Did that for about a year and a half. Then I transitioned to another private gym down in Alabama, which is where I got my first experience training like pro baseball and pro football players. So that was pretty sick. Got to work with like NFL Pro Bowler, MLB All-Star, and probably like a dozen to 15 in each of those groups. That was a massive learning opportunity for me, especially young in my career. And that's really what helped bolster my resume enough to get hired by the Kansas City Royals when I think I was only like 25 when they hired me. I think I just turned 25. So that's crazy. Like, I feel like I don't know anything, but here I am, getting an opportunity in pro baseball. So 2017 is when I started with the Royals. I did 2 seasons with them. The thing about pro baseball, though, that you don't really see is that it actually kind of sucks. Like, it's cool. Yeah, like you get all the team gear and, I had people asking me for my autograph, which is insane. Like, and keep in mind, these are like crazy like nerds, like old guys. So like, it's not really that cool, but still I can say like people ask me for my autograph. I got my own baseball card, which is cool. Like I don't expect anyone to do this, so just want to make that clear. But if you do Google my name, if you search far enough, you'll see my baseball card. I think you can buy it on eBay for like
I'll
three
put that in
bucks.
the show note captions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't make any money from it. Like, don't buy my baseball card, please. It's worth nothing. You're losing money on the investment. But I do. I can officially say that I have a card. And actually, a funny note on that is, um, I'll have to like I'll have to find one and take a picture of it and post it. But they gave us like a form to fill out, like a sheet, and they're like, "Hey, this is what you fill this out, and this is what's going to go on the back of your card." And it's supposed to be like your baseball stats, right? But I'm like, I don't have baseball stats. Like, what am I going to put? So I ended up putting my my lifting PRs on the back. So I have like my deadlift PRs on there. Uh,
Just has
so
all this health and performance stats on it.
yeah, I have my bench bench squat deadlift. So I did what I could. And it's funny too, the picture that's on the front of the card was literally taken by my athletic trainer on his iPhone. And he was standing like way too far behind, like way far back and zoomed in. So the quality is like, I mean, the quality is terrible. It's just not a good picture. So
No,
everything about the baseball card is hilarious.
I don't. I'm glad that you got some love as a strength and conditioning coach in the form of that. I don't think a lot of people, unless you're in this field, know how shitty of a job strength and conditioning is. Like in terms of hours to pay, like intrinsic motivation, output, like all those things that you love, great. But the context of how you're living in response to how you're getting paid, even at the highest levels, in combination with the volatile nature of job security within it, it's astounding to me.
Yeah. Well, let me. Yeah, the baseball card was cool, but like it doesn't make up for the fact that yeah, we were working 80 hours a week every week, like almost no days off for 6 months. Like if you think a fire season's bad, like this was just as bad, if not worse.
And
And we're
indoors.
making we're making $10 an hour my first year, which is literally minimum wage in Arizona, which is why that's how much we're getting paid. My second year, I did get a raise. We got bumped from $10 to 10.50. Not for anything we did, it's because the minimum wage in Arizona moved up 50 cents. So once I was like 26, about to be 27, I was like, man, I love this job. Like working for the Royals, that's like my hometown team. It was like a dream job. But I was like, man, minimum wage, 80 hours a week. I have no life for half the year. You know, I was like, man, I can't do this, which is ironic. Get it now that I got into wildfire, which is like the same problems. Just
What does it tell about our
it
personalities
just,
to
but
keep
now I'm
finding,
just increasing my chances of cancer and like physically
just
hurting
keep
myself.
inducing the suffering? I wonder
Yeah,
what's,
I
there's a
just
psychologist waiting to respond to this, I'm sure somewhere.
yeah. So ended up getting out of uh, that, and then kind of hit a point where I was like, man, I don't know if I want to keep going down the strength and conditioning career field. Like I once I kind of hit like my goal of coaching in pro baseball, it was kind of like I'm at the mountaintop. Like now what? Um, so I for the first time in my life, I was like, dude, actually don't know what I want to do, which was like really weird territory for me. And I what I decided to do was go fight fire for a summer. And my whole goal with that was to make money, make some good money, hopefully work a lot of overtime, and do something physically, mentally challenging. And then hopefully in these 4 to 5 months, like I figure out what direction I want to go with my life. Do I want to go back into strength and conditioning, or do I want to figure something else out? Well, got through that fire season, and still didn't know what the heck I wanted to do. So that was not helpful. What it did do though is it did, really introduce me to wildfire, and I did, to be honest, I did fall in love with it in a lot of ways. Thought it was really cool, which I know most people do once they do this job. It is kind of hard to do other stuff. Um, it ended up actually helping me a ton. 'Cause having that fire experience helped me get a job with the Austin Fire Department a little bit later, and I worked for Austin Fire as an exercise physiologist. So that was kind of my first experience really getting to blend the fire service with the strength and conditioning field and kind of blend both of those together. And that was awesome. I loved it. I got to really get kind of in the weeds with like the small community that existed within like the fire service strength and conditioning field. And that little group is growing, but it's still small, and we're all still like really good friends. And that's where Rugged Athlete kind of came in. It was like me. I think 2023 is when I officially like made the Rugged Athlete Instagram page. 2024 is when I officially like made an LLC and said like, hey, I'm going all in on this. But when I started it, I was just like, I want to I want to make something that is kind of unique to me because I have the strength and conditioning background. I have this experience on a hand crew. I also have experience in the Army as in the infantry, which I have just kind of glazed over that. I can share more about that later. But yeah, I have like all this experience, and I wanted to just have a place where I could kind of put all of my thoughts and everything in one place. So that's kind of what the Rugged Athlete page started out as. And then I kind of hit a point, to be honest, where I was like, I want to go all in. Like, I want to go all in on the wildfire community and just really double down on helping this population. And a lot of that was just from like our conversations and kind of getting to know you. It was also meeting people like JJ and Heidi, who are now on our staff, who will also do an episode like this where we get to know them a little bit more. And it was just seeing the opportunity that was out there. And like you kind of mentioned at the very beginning of this episode, like, us being able to bridge the gap. And so that's really what fueled the start of Rugged Athlete. And I will say, man, it's been so cool seeing the growth of the business to this point. I mean, I forget the numbers off the top of my head. I think last year in 2025, we worked with over 130 wildland firefighters in different capacities, whether that's one-on-one training or, using some of our PDF training programs or using some of our programs on our app. Just over the course of the year, getting to work with that many people has been awesome. And, it's just 2026 is looking to be even more. And we're growing, we're reaching more people. We officially brought on you. We officially brought on JJ and Heidi. So now, our coaching staff, which was just me, is now multiplied by, we've got 4 now. Like, we got a whole freaking human performance team, which is awesome. I didn't think we would get to this point as fast as we are, but man, that's where we are, and it's really cool. We can wrap this episode up, but real quick, if you want to kind of share, I guess maybe from your personal standpoint, like how you want to use the Rugged Athlete platform just in general, and like your involvement with this business to grow kind of your mission with your expertise and just what you want to accomplish here.
Yeah, I feel like as you started talking about your background and your journey into this, I realized that I really glazed over pretty much everything internal to like my mission at its core. Like, I talked to you about working at Sports Academy, having access to high level resources, seeing the highest levels of sport performance, and then wanting to translate that to a deserving group of public servants. But to me, if I can just start to like wrap off the things in my head around my mission, I'm here to serve a group that's been undervalued in the grand scheme of the first responder population for decades. This is a group of folks who have just humbly produced a work output and done a job.
Yep.
Because of the loyalty or because of the intrinsic motivation to do hard things. But it's just a group of people who never ask for anything. And me getting involved with Wildland at the level of being on a hand crew has really it's made it my ultimate mission to give back to this population and serve a group that's been marginalized and it's been underserved. When I got out of my field, when I got done with my degrees, basically, I went on kind of a self-exploration, and like most people, they go to Southeast Asia for that, and I wandered around for about like 4 months with really like not a lot of plans, just kind of an open space to start thinking about life. And it opened up a ton of doors for me to realize the impact that I could make on the folks in this world with respect to health. Like, I saw so much that trip impacted me in ways that I can't quantify. Just having this existential dilemma of, dude, I need to stop thinking about how I can secure a job, how I can provide for just myself, how I can get more degrees, how I can produce research, how I can make a living for myself with this field. It completely turned the tides from how I viewed strength and conditioning in terms of my purpose here. And it shifted it to one where I thought this is a knowledge base that has the potential to unlock a ton of levels for people, improve their quality of life in a just huge facet of ways. And I wanted to start looking at groups that I thought just didn't have access to this knowledge, and it doesn't just extend to wildland firefighters. It's people, just blue collar people in general, man. Like people in this type of environment, and they just do it. They just work. That's all they know how to do, and they want to serve. They just serve their families, and they just show up and produce what needs to be produced to get the job done. And I just think it's really cool to me to see myself in a role with Rugged Athlete where I can be of service and provide those tools to people and have this kind of a platform where I can help people just live to their fullest, not just go to the job and get it done and then go home, but achieve what they thought they weren't even really possible of, taking their performance to a level that they don't even comprehend, and then hopefully making the job enjoyable, hopefully having a life that they can enjoy outside of the job, off of the fire line. And I'm just really appreciative for the team that we have here at Rugged Athlete and the resources that we're about to put out. I think it really is intrinsic for people like me and Austin. When we talk, we feel this common value of wanting to give to the population and do it by any means necessary. And it's a really special thing to connect with people who just want to embark on that journey for the authentic reasons. And I think that's a cool thing to point to. Just that's what this population has. It's never been about publicity, and it's never been about the monetary incentives for the job. It's just the purpose of being here, the brother and sisterhood, and the unique perspective that's shared in this wildland community is one that's just super beautiful to me. And I think it's something that can be just tapped into and only elevated with these types of resources. So I'm stoked to get going on this process and get the word out to the crews that this knowledge and the resources are available to them, and start to make the impacts that I think that we're going to have.
Yeah, dude, I'm so fired up. I feel like there's been a lot of things we've kind of talked about in this episode that I've wanted to just derail and just go all in. Like, all right, we got to talk about this. But I had to kind of remind myself, like, hey, well, we got a long ways to go. We got lots of episodes to do. So, we'll get to some of these things and we'll get to really talk about them in more detail. But I think that answer was perfect, because it really is. It's a calling. Like, for me, it's absolutely a calling of like making an impact on our profession, and feeling almost to the point, like I'm in this position for a reason. Like, I have this experience for a reason and for a purpose, and it's to make an impact and to grow this little physical health, human performance side of the industry, because, like, as we've kind of talked about multiple times already, like if we don't step in and try to do something, who else really can, or even wants to. So that's kind of how I see it. And one thing I do want to say too, I don't think it would be responsible not to point out the fact that, the reality is I only have 2 fire seasons under my belt, and you only have 2 fire seasons under your belt. Like, I think it's important to bring that up, because, like, I know a lot of people could easily look at our fire experience and, kind of justify not taking us as serious. And I totally understand. I totally get that. I had someone I really really respect. They're a superintendent who I've worked with. Tell me straight to my face, like, if you really want to make an impact, like, you need more time, like you need more seasons under your belt. You need like you need to do the job more. And I agree. Like, I agree. If I stayed in it more and did more seasons, that I could make a much bigger impact. With the way kind of my life outside of work is, that just doesn't seem like that's a possibility. And at the same time, I think, and we've talked about this off camera, like, you know, there is a point where it's like the more you spend in operations on incidents out in the middle of nowhere with no self service and just doing the job, that's just less time that we can work on building resources and coaching people and helping people on this side of things. So like there is kind of like there's a give and take there. Um, I do think, again, you know, I mean, I'll just be transparent. Like, yeah, my task book is empty, y'all. Like, my fireline experience compared to other people is limited. But I hope that people can still see our expertise really from a strength and conditioning, from a human performance side of things, is valuable for what it is, and we are able to leverage our fire experience to make it specific to this population, and then just our calling and our passion is really what's fueling and guiding what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish and where we're trying to go with this business and with everything. And then the last thing I'll say is, hopefully, people listening to this with more fire experience than we have are motivated to join us and come on this team. Whether that's in like an unofficial or official capacity or like whatever that can look like. But hey, like we want your experience. We want to hear from you, and we want your feedback on how we can take this mission and apply it and move the needle and make an impact. So, well, I will say we already have had tons of people in that position, but the I guess the invitation is there. Like, we want to get as many people involved in this as we can to help try to really try to make this thing happen sooner rather than later. We know we're working with the government pretty much 100% of the time here, so everything moves slow, a lot of red tape. That's how it is, but I'm impatient, so I'm trying to do stuff as quick as we possibly can.
Yeah, just to speak to that as well, because it's I agree. It's very easy to have imposter syndrome with 2 years of
Yeah.
fire experience under your belt, and
Oh, it's easy to have that for sure.
very easy.
It's a
But
constant.
at the same time, my mission's not to make sure everybody knows my name. My mission's not to make sure that my opinions are voiced on on a platform where there's a bias. This is a platform that's simply there to push the needle in the direction that we know is going to be beneficial for individuals in a performance way, in a longevity way. It's bringing together science communication, practical application, and then hopefully translation to the actual field itself. And if that mission happens, then great. But that's not going to happen with just me or Austin. That's going to happen with feedback, with community, with integration. We want to work with people, and we want to be able to have those conversations with folks who are in fire for 10, 20, 30 years and have more knowledge of what might work, what might be feasible, how we can get involved. We're not saying that we know the answer. That's one thing I've had to kind of like step back with everything I've done in this field of I'm here to explore the answer, but I just want that answer to be uncovered. So I don't know if anybody singularly in this field knows like how to improve performance for all of wildland firefighters. This is a placeholder for two individuals that are passionate about the topic, that have some requisite abilities to provide some advancement in that realm. But it's really just a place for us to put work into this concept of bringing high level performance to a population that has high level demands. And however that happens is great. I hope there's collaboration. I hope there's communication and feedback. We're going to get things wrong. This podcast is going to suck and get better. So I hope that you all can see that this is a place for progression. This isn't a go to Rugged Athlete. We have all your answers. To be honest, most of the time the answers lie at the level of your crew, at the level of you. I don't necessarily know if there's any singular post I can make or podcast I could listen to that solves every problem that's unique to every type of scenario. But there's a good chance that a lot of these themes will cross over and provide some advancement for a good amount of folks or a good amount of people, or it could be at the level of an agency or the level of one person. So at the same time, please don't assume anything about us. We're not, like, if I have zero bias about this and ultimate humility of, I don't understand everything there is to know about fire, and I never will. I'll never understand the full scope of the human body. All of these fields are monstrously difficult to try and understand, but it only can happen through folks who are taking that effort to connect the dots. And that's a little bit hard if you're digging line and head in the dirt for the majority of your year. So that's kind of what led me, and I imagine Austin, to step into this role of wanting to grow that practitioner like ability to be able to blend the worlds that exist between fire, between data, between practice, and
Yep.
only going up from here. So I'm excited to look back in 5 years and think, damn, this podcast sucked, but the mission was there.
Yeah. I know. Watch, like, we get done and like this recording just didn't even work. Like we were just
Yeah,
talking
dude,
the whole
there's a
time.
complete possibility of that
Yeah,
happening.
I'm actually a
There
little
was
bit terrified to.
there was planes flying over, my internet signal's iffy. Like it's a great starting point that can only go up.
Yeah, but hey, we're doing it. So I think first episode that was pretty solid. We'll man, well, I'm excited to get into more of this stuff, in the future because it's going to be a lot of opportunities, and I think it'll be good.
Me too, man. Stoked.